Just for total clarification, I went into this movie not knowing anything about it other than the fact that Ben Foster was in it, and it was directed by Barry Levinson. And I saw a news story that the Bidens were planning on hosting a screening of the film at the White House, which I thought was interesting. And I thought, oh, that must mean this film is important. It's on HBO. Let's see what it's about. I didn't know it was a true story, Holocaust survivor, but I'm glad I watched it. I'm glad I took a leap of faith here and watched a random movie. I'm Mac from movieguy.com, and this is my review of The Survivor. I'm a blind film critic, so obviously I'm going to have a different approach to this than maybe your average critic will, but we're going to talk about something called audio description. So if you don't know what that is, I will be talking about that later. But first, let's jump into what The Survivor is about. At first, I really didn't know, I kind of was laughing to myself. I was like, oh, Ben Foster's in another movie with Survivor in the title. Maybe he'll survive this one. And then I started watching the movie, and I didn't know it was about this guy who, during the Holocaust, he was chosen because he was a good fighter to box to entertain the Nazis, based on the true story of Harry Haft, as written in a book by his son Alan. That's kind of the core basis of the story, and that's what we build off of. There's more, and there's sort of layers. This is very much like an onion. It's a little bit of a disjointed onion, but it's always trying to peel back another layer to the story. If I'm being honest, at the beginning of the film, maybe because I walked into it not knowing what the film was about, but a lot of people walk into films not knowing the story. Even if you knew what it was going to be about, you still wouldn't necessarily know the story. It took me a while to sort of understand what Barry Levinson was trying to do with the story. I felt like it was very disjointed. He does jump around a lot in terms of time periods and where he is in the story. Characters come and go, and then they come back, and sometimes characters disappear, and you wonder if they're relevant, and sometimes they don't feel relevant, and then some things are relevant later. It's a very odd sort of written and edited film. It doesn't mean it's bad. I also have a really weird, I feel weird about saying something like, this is my favorite Holocaust movie. Those are weird things to say about films like this, because why would you have one? I know in this climate that there were so many interesting choices in this film, and I thought about the parallels of where we are politically and how we have so many anti-Semitic attacks. And towards the end of the film, there's an immigrant, a Jewish immigrant, that's singing God Bless America, but is singing it in what I believe is Hebrew. I don't speak Hebrew, but I'm just going to take a leap of faith and say that she was singing it in Hebrew. And it was beautiful, and it was of the period where she was genuinely grateful in immigrating to the country. Ben Foster's Harry has a conversation with his kid where he talks about how he wants his kid to live in a world where he isn't targeted for his religious beliefs. And I think so much about where we are today, and I wonder if that's why Barry Levinson felt like now is the time for this story. When you have people who are comparing our political climate and saying that what we're going through is the same as the Holocaust, and to see just this one man's story, it's so far removed from anything we're going through right now that I think maybe that was the point of the film. I think this is a very timely film and why it's such an important piece of art. I also really want to say, before I lose all of my viewers, I probably should have said before I got remotely political, Ben Foster's an amazing actor, and he needs an Oscar nomination. I don't really care what for, but this film made me realize, along with the laundry list of films he's already been in, that it's really frustrating that he has not gotten that honor. He should be for this. I mean, this is a fantastic performance from him. He absolutely carries the film. But he's always terrific. And I'm always in awe of what he does. And to me, this was a performance I didn't even see coming from him. It felt to me almost as transformative as when I saw him do Hell or High Water. And I felt like that was just like a totally different part of Ben Foster that I didn't know was there. And then now I'm getting this film, and I'm like, I didn't even know he had this in him. He just constantly keeps moving the bar in terms of what he's able to do as an actor. And he's amazing, and this film is terrific that way. Hans Zimmer comes in with just a terrific score. For this film to be as sort of under the radar as it is, it really has such a great team behind it. And I don't know how it just sort of casually drifted onto HBO in the middle of April. Like, I don't know how that came to be. I don't know why it's not really like an awards season contender. My guess would be it has a lot to do with Barry Levinson's direction, which, like I said, feels very disjointed. I was having a hard time following his focus, and he was showing us in fragments. The audio description didn't really help that way. I felt like the transitions were lost a lot of the times in the audio description, because a lot of times we would switch scenes or we would jump in time, and the narrator and the audio description wouldn't necessarily catch it, and it takes you a while to sort of catch up, and you always kind of feel like you're playing catch up with this film, and you kind of always feel like you're missing something. Like, I spent the whole movie kind of feeling like I didn't always know 100% of what was going on. I felt like I had missed things. I felt like there were things I didn't know. And I don't think that was intentional. And Barry Levinson's a fantastic director. Diner's a great film if you haven't seen it. He's, of course he has many other films on his thing, but I mean, he's a very intentional director. So I can't imagine that everything has to do with just the choices that he's made. I think a lot of it had to do with the audio description, which is, it's not bad, but it did leave me confused. And I don't think that that's really where I'm supposed to be with that. If I had to make another just sort of a light observation, I wouldn't have chosen this narrator for this film. She is just way too, what's the word? I don't want to say perky, upbeat, friendly, cheerful. It's not the right tone for a Holocaust movie. There are a lot of sort of somber voices out there, a lot of people who just don't have a lot of pep in their voice that would have been much more well suited for this film. She felt really out of place. She'd be great for kids' films or comedies. This was not the right thing for her as a narrator. So I wasn't totally in love with audio description, but Barry Levinson's direction, I'm also not 100% sure about. It jumped around a lot. It through periods in time, and sometimes like a character would drift in and he'd be important for a few minutes and then he would drift away. and you may not see him again, you know? Um, and you just sort of wonder, am I going to see him again? Like Peter Sarsgaard, sort of like his role is, I'm here, and then he goes away, and then he comes back, and it's sort of like a surprise, and then he goes away, and then he comes back, and it's like a surprise again. And there are some other characters that are like that. Like Danny DeVito really does not have a big role here. John Leguizamo's role just sort of happens, and he's there for a little while, and then he's just gone without much explanation. And the odd thing is, I thought the film was going a certain direction, and then so I like, for the first part of the film, I really was not into. The thing is that Harry is supposed to be looking for this woman that he knows. I'm trying not to spoil the whole film. And so that's part of the thing. He wants to fight because he wants to bring attention to himself, and that's what he did. Is he fought, and he ended up. They just kept throwing other Jews in the concentration camp at him, and every time he won, the other one was killed. So he's not necessarily 100% popular with the Jewish people, even though he didn't really have a choice, because if he had lost the fight, he would be killed. And he's looking for this woman, and he's trying to tell his story, and the story doesn't really make him popular with people, but he thought the story would help bring him attention. In the meantime, he meets Miriam, who's played wonderfully by Vicky Krebs, who I'm really excited to see do something after The Phantom Thread. I've been wondering where she went after Phantom Thread. I feel like I haven't seen her that much, and she was terrific in that. So it's really good to see her in a meaty role. But at the beginning of the film, I just really thought she was going to be a minor character. I didn't think we would see her as long as we did. So while she was in the part of the film that she was in, I wasn't connected to her until it became clear that the intention was that she was going to be staying in the film. I just sort of assumed that she was going to be like the other characters, because this film does a lot of like drifting in and out of characters, and suddenly they're not there anymore. Probably aside from Ben Foster, the character with the most consistent amount of screen time would be Billy Magnuson's character, who plays the Nazi that keeps putting Harry up for fights. I would say he has a substantial amount of screen time. He even has screen time after a certain point where you would assume that he won't have screen time anymore, which is a little odd, but it's just because of the time jumps that make everything just that much more difficult and hard to follow. And the audio description just didn't do me any favors. I don't think this is a bad film. I think there's a story here. I'm just not 100% sure that it was collected and told in the right way. And I understand why, at a certain point, this film ended up becoming predominantly about Harry's relationship with Miriam, because it's written from the perspective of Alan, and explaining that would spoil a lot. So I understand why there would be a lot of information on that end, but you don't necessarily know that that's going to be the thing. You know, you kind of assume that it's going to go the other way, and because Hollywood likes to set you up for these, you know, like long lost reunions, and the reunion, you know, I'm not going to say whether it comes or doesn't come, because again, that's a spoiler. This is a true story. It's hard to spoil true stories. I feel like there's somebody out there that knows about Harry Haft and is like, just go ahead and talk about it. Everybody knows this story. You're the only one that doesn't. But I'm sure there are other people who don't, so it's weird to try to navigate through, because I had problems, but they're all like tied to spoilers, and it's really hard to talk about it. It's just it's kind of disjointed, and it's a little bit all over the place, but it also is an incredibly powerful story. And I don't want to get into the whole, like, you know, like Holocaust porn, like we're watching this, you know, like this tremendous thing happening, and that's what makes it, like, we're making this film for that reason. And like, the suffering is for our entertainment. I'm not going to say I was entertained. I just found his story to be more compelling, because as we learned more about it, it just seemed to be getting progressively worse for him. He just, like, more things kept happening, and you would think that when you're living in a concentration camp and being put in the situation he's already being put in, that they couldn't possibly find more ways to torture him, and make him do things that he doesn't want to do. But that continues to happen to him. And that part I found to be the most compelling part of his story arc. And that part is what I'm saying when I say it's like peeling back an onion, is that we keep getting these different layers. And that's where the time jumps help, because you end up coming back and circling around and revisiting. But the time jumps also fail in that we just suddenly lose contact with characters, and we're not really sure if we're ever going to see them again. And then the ones that we don't really get an explanation of why we don't really see them again. And it becomes so commonplace. Like I said, I really just didn't expect Miriam to be in as much of the film as she was. So, Ben Foster's amazing. I think there's a lot to like about this film. I don't know. I don't know how I would have felt about this film if I could see, and I didn't have to rely on the audio description. I don't know if the film would have been any clearer for me. That's where I'm sort of in a gray area. I'm sitting here trying to figure out a grade for the film, and I don't know if it's Barry Levinson's direction or the audio description, because I felt somewhat confused at times in the transitions. I felt like the person who wrote the narration didn't quite understand how much the film was jumping around and how confusing it was, and didn't quite take that into effect when actually narrating. So, but I'm stuck with what I got, and I can't do anything about that. So, I'm going to give The Survivor a B+. It might be a better movie than that. But right now this feels like the B+ is heavily being helped out by Ben Foster's absolutely tremendous award-worthy performance. That's all I can say. If I had to say the biggest reason to watch this film is not just to learn about Harry Haft, but to just sort of revel in everything that is Ben Foster. He's an incredible actor, and it's time. It is time for him to get his due. So I'm grateful to have seen this story, and I think more people need to see stories like this in 2022. I think we're at a place in our culture where stories like The Survivor should be told, because too many people do not know or have any idea. So I hope you like my review, and don't forget to subscribe and let me know what you think in the comments. And if you want more reviews from me, you can head over to macthemovieguy.com and see more reviews. And if you want to know about more movies that are audio described, you can check them out at the Audio Description Project. But until next time, let's see if Ben Foster makes any more movies with the word Survivor in the title. All right.